reval is complete. We no longer have boots on the ground. Following the hearings that will be upcoming, we may send people out to review a property or two, but otherwise than that, we're done with the fieldwork phase. What we're going to do now is we've created new land and building schedules for or Mike did, and actually I'll just let Mike talk about the creation of our new land and building schedules.
So when we're hired to do a reval, the whole game is to get the values up to fair market value, or at least as close to fair market value as we can get them. You know, the bigger the community, the easier the statistics work. The smaller the community and the more heterogeneous it is, the less well the statistics work. But luckily, we've been in this town for a while. You know, Paul knows the town really well. We already had revals, we had schedules here that we were using. So the game was to bring them up so that they would address any inadequacies that we've seen since the last time we did it, address the market changes that have occurred since the last time we did it, and try to bring all of your values up fairly to current market. Now, when we say current market, we ideally would like to talk about properties that sold within the last year, and we want the new assessed values to be pretty close to those values. Now, not all properties sell equally. Like some people get a good deal, some people pay a little more. There's a lot that goes into a sale, so we use statistics for that. And the statistic we use is a sales study, which you've just been handed. And the reason we use that exact study is because that is what the state uses to measure the quality of your assessments. So this is happening, these sales studies are happening every year. The state comes in, does an analysis of your values, gives you an answer as to where your current assessed values are relative to the sales of that time period.
And it's just been placed up front of them.
This one right here.
We received this in the mail last week.
So what this is telling you, that is, if we didn't change your values, your assessments are on average 52% of fair market value, using the state's formula. So obviously, the farther away you get from 100%, the less real your assessments are. Now, there's also a threshold. As you get below 70%, the state starts to withhold some funding from you. Now, this subject comes up all the time. As that ratio goes down, the amount of the $25,000 homestead that people get on their tax bill also goes down. But what I want to present to you, just as a side, not the main point of tonight, the value of that doesn't go down. And the way to look at that is, let's say you have a homestead that you would normally get at 100% value of $25,000 at whatever the tax rate is at the time. Your values drop to 50 cents on the dollar. Your homestead drops to $12,500. Well, but at that point, you have a really high mill rate. If you double all your values, bringing everybody up to 100%, you bring your homestead from 12,000 to 25, it's at a lower mill rate. So the benefit to the individual taxpayer as that homestead comes down is not a diminished benefit. The benefit to the individual taxpayer is we reset value to full market and they get their $25,000 homestead back, isn't meaningful to them. The thing that the taxpayer doesn't see, but the town sees, is there's funding that comes from the state that gets affected by those ratios. And those are sort of in the background. They're part of like your state revenue sharing, they're part of your school budget. There's a bunch of things that happen when a town's ratio gets below 70, and you're currently at 52. So
Education subsidies.
Right.
if we weren't going to bring your values back up to full market value, you are getting bled a little bit by monies you would otherwise have gotten. There's another factor too. The reason the state does these sales studies is one, to keep check on the assessors. But two, they use the results of these sales studies to build what's called the state valuation. Now, it would be nice if the state valuation was a simple number. Just like it's all of your assessments added up, right? That would make sense to a normal person. You take every property in town, what it's valued, you add it up. We do that every year as part of commitment to get a full value for the town. That is not what the state does. The state takes your town, breaks it up into parts and pieces, takes this ratio, takes some other ratios, takes some other numbers that they come up with on their own, mix and match the whole thing to give you a state valuation. Now, what we've noticed over time is as these ratios start to drop, the further away these get, the bigger impact they have in unpredictable ways on the state valuation. So sometimes that actually works to your advantage a little bit, depending on your town and how much industrial property you have and how much commercial. Other times, the lower that ratio gets, the less well that system serves you. The easy solution to all of this is what we're doing now. We're resetting properties to market. That means those sales studies that the state's going to do aren't going to be at 52%. They're going to be north of 90%. Now, how close to 100% we get, we can have a conversation about that tonight briefly. But the idea is when we get our assessments up into fair market value, all of that other stuff takes care of itself. May not always be great, you know, you may wish the state gave you more school subsidy money, more state revenue sharing, but at least it won't be subject to the vagaries of really low ratios. So once you get into this situation, one, the state tax assessor could say, hey, you're at a 52% ratio, you have to do a reval. Well, they're pretty laissez-faire up in Augusta. They just prefer to take some of your funding away and encourage you that way. But either way, this is a good time to be doing a reval. We're ready to deliver the reval. The reason we're here tonight is to show you that the reval we're about to deliver brings you to fair market values. We're going to show you that in two ways. One, Paul's going to hand out the sales study. The one he just gave you is, this is what the state saw if we didn't change our values. The one he's about to hand out is what it is with the proposed values, the values we're about to deliver to your town. You ready to hand those out?
Well, actually, Mike, I created two of them. I wanted to, I think our ratio for, our schedules are honed in on using sales primarily from 24, 25, and 26, okay? But we split them just to show you what happens. Now, on the top of this one here, it says these sales are from January 25 to April 26. This sheet is from January 24 to December 31st, 24. If you just look at the 24 sales, we're at 102%. And if you look at the 25, 26 sales, that's a 16-month period, we're at 96%. But if you blend that, we're spot on.
So what?
Under the classes, R and U, what's the R for?
Rural, urban, and W is for waterfront.
Thank you.
In larger communities, the state, when they do that analysis, they'll break out the groups and they'll do the sales studies.
So this is
within
the
group.
16-month window.
In an ideal world, when the auditor from the state comes, they would be able to determine the ratio for separate subclasses of property. You don't have a big enough town for that. There will never be enough separate urban sales, separate waterfront sales, separate commercial sales in a reasonable sale period.
Okay.
Now, if you were Gray, for example, they would be able to break that down. You might have 18, 19 waterfront sales. You would do those separately.
Okay.
Here, they can't. So it is sort of the nature of a smaller community. But if, so your ratio will always be like the 1 ratio.
Okay.
It'll be all the properties that sold, considered sort of equally.
Okay.
So you saw that before, if we hadn't done anything, the ratio would have been at 52. Now, the new values, depending on what time window you use for your sales, are arguably broader time window, last 2 years, right at 100% market value. If you use the most recent year, 25 and 26, the new values that we're proposing are 96%. So that's almost full market value. And if you look back at 2024, which Paul handed to you, the proposed values would be 102%. That makes sense if you think about it. The values in 24 continued to go up a little bit into 25, and now they're kind of stalling out a little bit in 26, at a point that's a little bit higher than 24. So when you're doing what we do, which is set value for property, we're trying to set value for your town that you can carry forward for a while. When was the last time we did this?
10 years, 2016.
It's kind of the perfect sweet spot right there, if you can get this project to run 10 years. Now, that was a rough 10 years, the last 10 years, from the perspective of how fast property values went up. Hence the 52 ratio. In our life, in our careers, that, I don't think there was ever another 10-year period where you would go from 100% to 52% in 10 years. Normally you go from like 100% to, 80, 79, 73, but it is what it is. It happened and it occurred. So now here we sit where we need to deliver values to you that you can carry forward. Now, if we thought that the market was just going to keep rolling north the way it has been going, then we'd probably try to be telling you guys we needed to be a little over 100% right now. But we don't think that. We also don't like being speculative, because if you're wrong, taxpayers look at you like you just tried to take more money. Now, that isn't the way it works. The amount of money that gets taken from a taxpayer is based mostly on the rate. Just raising the value, if the rate goes down, you don't get any more money. You raise money at town meeting, not by raising an individual's value. But the impression's out there. So having the most recent year come in at 96, we consider that to be a sweet spot, and here's why. When we go to certify our ratio, which is every year there's these ratios that get determined by the state. That's your developed parcel ratio. It's a fixed number. The state auditor does this, writes that down. But when we get that, we get a little bit of leeway in how we declare it. And the ideal situation for a town is to have assessments somewhere in the mid-90s. We then declare 100. So from the state's perspective, we're saying they're full value. But in fact, they're just a little off full value. It's the way the system works. It's like the only way in this whole system that you can do anything that has a net, although a very small benefit to the town, is having that slight gap. Where if you get below 91, you can't declare 100. And now you're in the sliding ratio situation. If you're at the mid-90s and you declare 100, you're getting to say you're at 100, but you're actually only at the mid-90s. So the reason for that is all mathematical, and it all has to do with the way the state divvies out money. We know this because this is what we do. For you guys, the question is, do you think if we bring you values that have been shown to be 96% to fair market value on average by this particular way to measure it, would you feel like we gave you your money's worth in the reval? There are some towns that are like, well, wait a second, why don't you put us right at 100? Because as we move forward, if we're at 100 now, then, and the market goes up a little over time, it'll take longer before we're down into ratio trouble again. So that's one thought. The other thought is, if you pick 100 right now, and there's any stagnation at all in the next few years, then you end up being high. And there's nothing the population likes less than having ratios above 100. And so we think that right now, we kind of did it all already. Now, we can move the levers. If you guys aren't comfortable with the 96, that's fine. We can do something about that. We got to the 96 really, well, I'll call it honestly. We did the job we thought would be best for your town. We did all the properties. We've reviewed them. We're not quite done. We've still got some review to do. And this is where it landed. So Paul asked me, should we do anything about that? And I said, no, we should go with 96 because I think it's the strong position to be in. But we do need you guys to kind of give us the nod, like you're okay with that, before we declare.
This is a sampling of, I could have printed them all, but just 5 different properties, just so you could see their sale price compared to their assessed values. And feel free to share, they're all different types of properties. Some are new houses, old houses, commercial properties,
While you're looking at that, I'd also like to add, when we say 96, we mean that of the 63 sales that are here representative of your distribution of sale properties in town,
Feel free to.
you're gonna have a bunch of them that are gonna be over 100. It's the average is 96. It's made up of some that are a little lighter and some that are a little higher. So you're kind of moving a population here. So there will always be properties that will assess a bit more than what they sold for. Some of that's time, some of that's the circumstances of the sale. There will always be properties that we will value a little bit less than they sold for. It's the nature of the business. We don't just set the value at the sale price. That's not the way Maine works. You're not supposed to do that in Maine. There's other states where that's how you do it. The property sells, you set the assessed value at that sale price. But that isn't the way it works. Here, we're supposed to use the sales as guideposts. And we're supposed to find fair treatment for everybody using the sales as guideposts. And so there will always be some that'll be a little below it and some that'll be a little above it. What we're really working on is the average. Now, averages are funny things. If you only had 12 sales, an average can be pretty misleading. But we have 63 sales here. This is statistically significant. We feel comfortable that the measure is an accurate measure. Any given property, any given person, they're gonna say, well, they told me that I was only gonna be 96%, and my realtor told me I'm worth, 100, and you have me at 102. Well, that is part of the nature of the tax assessment. We don't promise everybody that they would be at exactly 96%. What we're saying is, we think we've brought the new values to full market value. The study we used to measure that brings us in the high 90s. Now, we can add a little value to the property pricing model. We can make that come out higher. We could not promise it to come out right at 100. It's not the way it works. But we could get it between, say, 99, 98, and 102. It really is something about how you as selectmen feel about that for us delivering the project to you. You want every penny we can put down, or are you okay with it being in the ballpark of fair market value? In a very small ballpark, by the way, the 96 is pretty close.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
It is pretty close, considering the vagaries of how these studies work and what real estate sells when and how sales are vetted. Which is why when we landed here, we thought, I think we're in the right spot. But you guys gotta realize, as we deliver, what we're handing to you.
Personally, I think that it makes a lot of sense to, the target of 96, and given what you just said, and, the state valuation, and that's a lag of 18 months because of the complexity, and the municipal valuation's a lag of another 2 years, so really trying to get that bar of 99% is chasing fool's gold.
Yes, Tiffany, as evidence of that, remember the state sales study that I mentioned we received a week ago? That's on your desk, and look, I want you to look at the dates of those sales on that sales study.
Right, exactly, that's what I'm saying.
There are 24, 25 sales for a 26 state valuation.
Right, that's the 18
That's
months,
your
2
18
years
months.
is what I.
Yes. It proves your point.
I think I'd be a little bit more concerned if I thought that the values were going to keep going up at the rate they have been, but I'm realistic and also talking to people. Things are slowing down a bit, and so what's 96 this year, maybe 100 next year.
If it
I know it's a
starts-
crapshoot,
If
but-
it starts to go down, 96 will seem like a really genius position. If it continues to go up or takes another little burst, and like 2 years from now, we can't quite certify 100 anymore, and then that homestead has to come down a little bit, then it would kind of look like we undershot. So that's exactly the point. We think 96 is close enough so that the changes between what you mentioned, which is the delay in the sales of record, and the possible flattening of the market. We don't need it to go down. If it just stays sort of flat, then you would have multiple years of being able to certify 100 with relatively solid values close to 100% market value, which is the sweet spot, is where we like to spend as many years as possible, where towns can declare 100 and have solid assessments, get the best possible return from the state, and not have the market come along and shake that tree. So that's why we think 96 is reasonable. If you are leaning towards, well, the property values have been going up, they may still, then pushing that up from 96 to 100, 101 would make sense. It's just how you feel. One other point I'll make, Wilton, Dixfield, this part of the state, you guys are kind of the last to get floated up by the tide, but you're also often the first ones to get dropped off the tide. We saw it, what year did we do Dixfield?
2017, 18. 18 was when it started to, which time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Anyway, it has happened before where we thought the market was still gonna stay and really hadn't shown signs of coming down at all, except it did.
Oh.
And it did in,
Well, every reval that we did in 2008, in 2010, we were high. Remember when the market collapsed?
so, and it comes quick in the North Country. It comes to you guys quicker than it does, say, our southern towns. You know, like Shapley has a pretty good ability to resist this stuff. Acton, same deal. You know, they tend to stay strong. Bridgeton doesn't ever seem to go down. You know, it is just a thriving community, the real estate shows it. They're developing a lot. So here, I'm a little less confident in putting strong numbers down right around this time period. I don't see you guys having another little boom in the near future. So,
Well, that's disappointing.
harsh, I know, it is what it is
It's
though.
realistic.
I just don't like to come in and think, you know, well, it went up this much last year, and it went up that much more the year before, and then the year before that, it was so much more. You know, at some point, if you just keep predicting gains, you'll eventually be wrong.
Well, in 20, for every reval that we did in 22, none of them had 100%. You know, they were compounding increases of 15% a year,
Sure. That's, I mean,
per year.
This is much like looking at, the stock market, and trying to, time the stock market. We're not a large cap, we're a small cap at this point here, and if you're trying to figure out and predict what the future is going to be, it's a lot easier, if you just stay the course instead of trying to predict what it's going to look like. So I think it's smart.
Well, you can see our position.
Yes.
We're cautious by nature. We also, the other thing is, there's what we need to be doing generally in assessing over time, which this town has done, we as a company have done it. There are places that are constantly trying to chase value, they're constantly, we just had conversations, we sat down about a town that really isn't suited to constantly changing their values. It's too small, the market's too limited, there's not enough data, you're just kind of guessing. And we don't recommend to our towns to constantly monkey with your values, even as the market changes. Here we are 10 years later, you're at a 50 ratio. We are now doing the reval, which is a good thing. It happened in a good cycle. We didn't overreact to that increased period.
We were at 69 last year.
Again,
We were okay.
we don't overreact. We do it slow and steady over time. And the reason for that is it's just easier on your population. They kind of get used to the pattern of taxing. The rate comes and goes. Like, you gotta set a rate every year, right? So there's always those pressures, and there's a lot of people for whom property tax is the biggest bill. We get that. So we don't feel confident constantly monkeying with assessed values across your whole town. We just think stability is a good thing. I think at these new levels, there's gonna be a period of instability, right? We're taking these old assessments and we're changing them substantially. Everybody together at one period of time, and then that will become the new normal. And then we'll leave it that way for a while. Even if the ratio doesn't go quite the way we wished it did, we're still gonna sit on it because it's stable and it's good for your taxpayers to have stability. So I think we're, the numbers we've just done are gonna allow us to be stable moving forward. Even if it isn't ideal, I think it'll be well within the realm of reasonable. And that way you can move on to the rest of your governance and go back to letting it, assessing just be something we worry about. And hopefully everyone will kind of settle into the new normal. There'll be a shakedown as soon as we send letters out to people, which, did we ring the letter?
No.
No? We will eventually send, if you guys give us the, sort of the blessing here, we're gonna keep moving forward with the final reviews. We will communicate with the town and get all the information we need, the most up-to-date information we can get to do an estimated tax on the new values.
I'll jump into this.
You wanna do this one? Good.
Yeah, to come up with a tax rate, we need 6 numbers. We need the total value of the town. Well, I think we'll have that covered. We'll need municipal spending. We're not gonna know that until June 22nd. We'll need the county budget and school budgets. Well, we won't know those numbers until June 9th, 10th, around there.
The county we want to have. That's all.
Right. So, but rather than send a new value notice to your taxpayers and say, we think your value is this, we'd rather at least say, this is what we think your estimated tax will be. So while we do know what revenue sharings are, we know what the other revenues are, my 3 wild cards are municipal spending, county budget, and school budget. So what we could do is, we're gonna use last year's town budget, school budget, county budget, and we'll qualify it in the letter. And using last year's spending for these 3 things, this is what we think your tax rate would be. At least it'll give the taxpayer a good comparison of what their taxes were and what they will be, or what they would be. Or it'll at least provide something for the taxpayer rather than nothing at all. We think it's better that way than offering them nothing.
Makes sense.
We don't feel good about
And we'll
sending-
qualify this in the letter, but what we'd rather not do is have these hearings done in August, have the meetings, give them 2 weeks and send taxpayers a tax bill. Doesn't really give them much time, you know? Let's say if you're a taxpayer and you receive the new value, like, well, you know, let me have my brother-in-law who's a realtor look at this, you know? A taxpayer needs time. So when we send out their proposed value with their proposed tax or an estimated tax, we'll give them 2 weeks to think about it, and from the day they get their letter, we'll schedule meetings right here in this room 2 weeks from that day. But even if we hold the hearings in June, we're not gonna send out tax bills until September. So if they don't come in June, well, that's okay, but if they're waiting on an appraisal or something, they'll still have the rest of the summer to get it to us before we actually send taxes out in September. So we're trying to give the taxpayers much time to maybe do their own research, maybe ask around. Of course, the assessments, the proposed assessments, will all be online. So if you want to look how we have your deck, or your shed, or your garage, or your land, what all that's assessed for, or what your neighbor's deck, or shed, or garage, or land is assessed for, it will all be on our website, just as it is today, except with the new numbers.
In a perfect world, we'd have all the budget numbers locked down. When we sent a letter out to people, we would have a pretty good estimate of your tax rate. So they would get their new value. They would get a very well-estimated tax rate, and they would see pretty much what their tax is gonna be, within a nickel to a quarter on the rate. That's ideal, because that allows people not to just look at, oh, my value doubled. They'd realize, but oh, look at that, my taxes only went up by 15%. So it takes some of the scare of the doubling of a value away, because you realize that it's not gonna double your tax. The worst thing is to send a letter out with a new value. People look at it and go, oh my God, my value doubled. Then they take last year's tax rate, multiply it by the new one, and they think they're gonna have their taxes literally double.
Right.
Well, we avoid that at all costs. It's not good for the town, it's not good for us. So,
Not good on the furniture.
perfect world, we would have the budget done, and we would estimate a rate, and that estimate, the letter that people got would give them a really good shot at what their tax is. Well, we don't know what these budget things are gonna be. We don't wanna guess what they're gonna be. So Paul's idea was to
Well,
use.
actually,
Actually, my
I can
husband's
extend
idea.
that to Nancy's
Okay,
husband.
Nancy's husband's idea was to use last year's numbers, because even though they may not be the same as this year's numbers, they are known numbers. So, and it would be applied to everybody. So their proportional impact would be noticeable. The difference is it won't necessarily be their final tax amount. So it'll be easy for them to decide, how did the program treat me? It won't be as good in terms of what do I have to write a check for when my tax bill comes. Now, that all depends on how close the three numbers are. If all three numbers this year are wildly more than what they were last year, then this whole effort will still leave people feeling a little sour, because their final bill will be way above our estimate. If they stay in the realm of reality, then that estimate will be reasonable, and people will be able to make a judgment on how the program affected them. They'll represent themselves coming in to meet with us if they need to, or go get opinions of value to challenge your assessment, whatever they need to do. But I think Paul's point of, we don't want to wait till the last minute and do this, then it doesn't give people much of a chance to even digest it before their bills are due. Acting earlier is better.
They can plan better too.
What was that?
They can plan better too.
They can plan better. Unfortunately, by moving to hearings in June, we just won't have those final numbers.
So I have one question. I like, completely agree with the concept they're talking about, that we don't want to just talk about a mill rate without actually giving them some sort of an estimate. So I work for the university mean system, and when we're estimating these things, we typically take like a 5-year rolling average of things that help us to understand, even if it's an estimate, that if, over the past 5 years, on average, how much has the school budget gone up? Over the past 5 years, how much has the municipal budget gone up? Over the past 5 years, on average, how much has the county gone up? And I'm just wondering if there's a rationale on not doing a 5-year rolling average. There might be. I'm just a numbers person. I'm curious.
Actually, Tiffany, I agree. Probably an average would average out the highs and lows, but I think this is more of you're looking at more of an upward trend. If you're looking at our school budget.
Right, but if we use what I'm saying is, if we use last year's numbers, I think there's gonna be an increase in everything, and what I'm saying is that, I would use 10 years, but we have the pandemic, so therefore I'm going, I don't wanna put the pandemic numbers in there. I'm not challenging it, I'm just trying to understand.
Well, we thought about that too, but then we thought, in the letter, and we'll be completely honest, we're gonna write the truth. We don't have a municipal, school, or county budget for '26 yet.
Yeah.
So this mill rate calculation uses your known 25 school, county, and municipal budgets.
I think this is a good way to test what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
And it would simply be, take a 5-year average and look at what the school's asking for.
Correct.
If it's about the same as your average would predict it to be, then I think that's probably a good way to go. If what the school is asking for deviates from that, then now you've used a number that isn't a known number. It's not like you can show an average, but you can't just point to say we used last year's. So it's a testable thing. We can just look at the 5-year average growth rate on the school
I
budget,
have all those numbers.
see what it would be.
Yeah.
We could look at what they're asking for. If they're more or less tracking, maybe that's a better way to do it. I just don't know what they're asking for.
I think I would be more comfortable looking at what I paid for taxes last year and the valuation was, and the new evaluation, and what I would have paid for taxes than I would a random 5-year number though. Because then I've got something solid to look at going, okay, well, it would have cost me 20% more last year with these values. So that's going to, be the kicker for me on whether or not I need to call you and say we need to have a chat.
Yeah, well.
Whereas just a random number, even,
It's not, I think what they're talking about though is that they do have those numbers, and what I'm saying is that if it passes the test.
We could look at what Tiffany is asking to confirm.
Right.
And if however, using a no number and writing in the reevaluation notice, tell the truth. We don't know the new numbers yet, but, we're basing everything on. That's very easy, very solid. I think Tiffany's way is, but if we can really give them this is really what's happening. It's something we could, we'll look at both. I guess we'll look at both, but do you guys collectively as a board have a preference? 'Cause
Well, let me make a comment on your comment, because I think we are trying to do two things with the letter. One of them is to have people understand how the project impacted them. What you said would be an ideal way to do that, and that would probably be better than dealing with the vagaries of a new budget season, right? But the reason we historically don't do that is because it doesn't give people who potentially could see big changes. It's often the case when we do revals, they all just happen to happen at the same time that there's big increases in the amount to be raised.
Yes.
And so not only are we giving people, the new value, in an ideal world, if we just use the previous commitments information, they could determine what our project did. But then when that tax bill comes, if it was gonna be 7% more and it's more, that when the bill comes, we haven't used the letter to give people a little advance warning on what dollars out of their pocket might be coming.
But we don't normally. We don't normally send them a bill, send them a statement each year saying, hey, you might go up 7% this year. We don't normally do that. Normally,
True.
they have to watch the three of them if they want to be informed about what's going on.
True, no doubt. And that is, it would be, mathematically, it's a whole lot easier if you just use the prior year's budget completely. So right now, we have some stuff that would be in this year's budget that we know, other revenues, revenue sharing, that type of information, we know that. We have three big numbers we don't know. So that's why we're here, though, is to have these conversations.
And where I'm trying to get to is that it's a lot simpler to explain that we used last year's tax number. However, if there's a methodology that you can use that actually can come closer to, this is your estimated tax number, and have a confidence that, as I said, if all of a sudden they take those 5 years from each one of them and they're wildly off because the rates are going up and down, it makes absolutely no sense. I would agree 100%. It was just a comment that I was making that I was thinking like, what would happen if you did take the 5 years and it did look close at this point here, we did know X amount. Again, I am not leaning, I'm not either way, it's just a comment and an observation.
So I have a question. Because of the difference in the, and maybe I'm understanding incorrectly, but with the homestead, right now, we're not getting the full amount of
Right.
homestead. Will it look like they would have paid less last year if we'd done the appraisal last year? That's the only thing I'm worried about, is somebody's gonna come back and say,
No.
I would have paid $1,500 less or whatever.
No, the homestead thing tracks almost directly with the total valuation change.
Okay,
So
okay.
let's say, for example, what was your mill rate last year?
2185.
Let's
yes.
assume the spending is exactly the same. There's no change in spending.
For a $100,000 house.
You're gonna pay $2,000.
Well, I'm just gonna skip that part.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Just so, let's say you have the 21 mill rate. And let's say, for argument's sake, we doubled the total value,
Uh-huh.
and your spending was the same. That is now a 10.5 mill rate.
Right, I get that part.
And the 10.5 mill rate now is against your 25,000 homestead. Last year, the 12,000 homestead, or whatever it was, is against a 21 mill rate. Those, for the individual taxpayer, the amount of homestead, the tax dollar benefit of the homestead, as these ratios and the homestead amount changes, tracks almost the same with your mill rate.
Okay,
So they don't actually get any more or less tax dollar benefit. They see a bigger number on their bill, but it's against a lower rate.
lower rate, right?
Yeah, so I always try to steer these conversations away from the individual taxpayer and the importance of the homestead to them, because it doesn't really come away with any, they see the homestead go to 25, but then when you take the mill rate and multiply that, you realize that it's probably about the same as it was a year
Okay,
before.
that's fine, I just.
Or it's in the
I've been having
ballpark of
nightmares
that.
about that. Okay.
So I think it really does boil down to the best way to have the letter be an indication of how the program affected an individual is what you suggested, just use last year's numbers. The best way to prepare people for what they might end up writing a check for this year would be to use either last year's budget numbers or some average projected amount. And for us, selfishly, it would probably be, well, it depends. If we send out notices where the estimated values end up being lower than the final tax bill, Paul's life becomes absolute misery just after commitment, and we end up having to start to deal with essentially tax reval hearings after the reval hearings. When we do hearings, we bring people, we schedule, we have extra bodies. We don't put it all on one guy walking in the door on what they usually come here.
Thursdays.
On a Thursday, where his day is from the beginning to the end, just jam-packed with people who are there to just kind of wring his neck because they found the bill was bigger than they thought it was. Well, I would have come before. So we're a little sensitive to that because it's hard for us to staff for that. So we kind of prefer to send the notice out. If it's going to be bad news, we'd rather have the people get the bad news in the letter. Come in when we're prepared. Let's have those meetings. Let's get it. And another reason we want to do it a little earlier in the summer, we want a chance to get everything pounded out that we can, anything that we could do to make our program better before it ends up being a bill somebody's got to pay, in a tax that gets committed, we would like to do it. So for us, we kind of see both of that. A little easier in hearings if we just give it all based on last year's stuff. Way worse after commitment. And we're more staffed for hearings than we are after commitment. Sending 2 people up here every Thursday that Paul would be here is just too challenging. And then it stretches everything out week after week, month after month, and it seems like the program never gets put down. When in fact, if we just did more of that in the review period, it would just all be kind of mostly tightened up by the commitment. So does anybody know what the proposed budget is this year for the school relative to last year's?
Up 35,000?
35,000, it's not much.
I think it's $35,000 increase to the town.
What's the total amount? What percent are we talking about?
It's
Well, I mean, I just
1%,
did the calculations for
1.7.
the past 5 years. So fiscal year
1.7.
'22 is
It's not even.
2.97%, fiscal year '23 is 0.62%, fiscal year '24, 4.30%, fiscal year '25, 8.26%. So there was, that. And then, right now, it looks like the average fiscal year, 5-year average is 3.34%, but fiscal year '27 proposal looks like it's 1.5%.
And that's
Somewhere
the
around there.
total, right? 1.7, and that's not what ours is though.
Right, no, they just asked for the
I was just asking about the
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
school, that's the school. That's the
Typically,
school.
the school is the bigger number in the commitment.
It's not,
Yeah,
it's not gonna be the biggest percentage. The
It's
biggest
not gonna be the
percentage.
biggest percentage this
So I
year.
understand that, but
Yeah.
like, I don't do your commitment, so how much when you take the revenues away and all we have left, do you have you don't have commitment papers, son?
No, but I'm.
On your tax bill, what percent is attributed to the school?
Oh, Mike, I.
I'd have to do the count. I don't-
Wrong-
yeah, I don't have
that. Okay.
Good question,
Yeah.
wrong meeting.
Wrong meeting for that.
Okay.
We can figure that out for you.
It's all right, but.
I withdraw my question, it was just curiosity, you know, just a number
But
of
we're okay,
curiosity.
but if we knew numbers like what you just said, look, the 2025 budget's gonna be up like 35,000 for 2026 proposed. All right, I can work with that. What about municipal? Anybody know?
180?
No, it's larger than that. Yep, in Lowell.
Okay, and county, I guess, that's,
That's the wild card.
Yeah.
That's the
well,
one
well,
that's
of the 3, the county's always the smallest.
percentage.
Uh,
Percentage of the
whole.
bill,
Of the whole bill.
but it's usually the largest increase, at least it has been in the past like 5 years, maybe?
Was it 14% you were talking about the other day?
Yeah, but in the world we're working.
Exponential.
Right, but the world we're working in right now, I mean, I get the fact that this is never any pressure on the town, but in the estimate world we're working in right now, if your total county bill is $350,000, what, do we have a ballpark on that?
I'll be right back.
It'd just be so much easier with real numbers. It's, you know, we're really looking at like Paul said, if he knows it's only like 50 grand against what it was last year, then we just use that full amount in our estimate. Just what they're asking for. We'll just use that number, assuming they're gonna get it. And if they don't, fine, then we estimate it a little high.
Don't you have your budget newsletter, Nancy?
I'm looking, I have the
Would
10-year
it-
historical data.
Would it be difficult to put both in the letter? Does that make it
Well,
too troublesome?
put too many numbers in.
I think I would rather not have more than one number. I want one tax amount when we're done.
Great. I got a cheat sheet.
Okay, great. County, $600,000. So 10% for them would be 60 grand. Were you thinking about that historically they go up like 10% a year?
What, the 10?
County?
County?
No.
Yeah, no, it's higher than that, but
For
it's not much
fuel?
higher. It's probably between, I'd say 10 to 15%. But if you just wanted to add in like 10%, go to the lowball number, you're getting closer to the real dollar amount that the taxpayer might see, is what I'm saying. Yeah,
And we'll probably, if you were talking about $180,000 on the town, what's your town after that? You're 5.3 million minus 2.6. 2.8 when you're done. 180,000 isn't even 5% maybe?
No, it'll be just over
3%.
3.2% for the municipal
Yeah.
side. Yep.
I think what we should do, so I think the decision today should be, should we make an effort, well, let's I'll get back.
So I've got the numbers for the school district.
You have the numbers?
Yep, so Wilton will have a 0.27% increase, and the total amount is $8,206, if it passes on it.
We can do the what percentage?
0.27.
Okay, so that's pretty small.
The total is
You got it printed, Paul, or?
Um,
Just give me a shout out.
1.5.
Okay, so that brings us, I think the important question now is, first of all, it sounds like estimates are gonna be doable. So that brings us to the, should we estimate these the best we can, using all our resources, and put that on our notice?
The last one.
Or should we stick with last year's because they're not gonna be that far off and they're known numbers? And
So with the estimate, so you're gonna give me the new value of my house,
yes,
and you're gonna give me an estimate of what my taxes are gonna be. How do I know in correlation what you just did to my tax base? Because with looking at last year's numbers, I can see what the difference would have been. But if you're giving me what taxes are going to be for this year, I don't know how that all came about. I don't know how much of it is because of the increase there and how much of it is because of the increase of
So how about
tax.
what we do is we add a statement that says the
We're at 91161,
estimated
right?
impact for
Okay, well,
last year to this
That takes care
year
of the school
on
budget increase, because that
whole
increased.
was, you were expected to see a
36,000.
3.5% increase
One will be a wash.
from one budget year to another, expected to be raised. We can put that number in there. And then if your personal taxes
So is that-
went up 3.5%,
Agreeing with what you
you'd be
said?
like, oh, this project didn't affect me at all. If your personal taxes went up 10%, you'd realize that 3.5 of that was gonna come from the budget change. 6.5% of that came from the
That's right,
budget.
thank you.
Would
Thank
that
you.
solve that, would that meet that?
I don't know, you need to keep it as simple as possible.
But no, that is pretty simple though, saying what it would have gone up without any change.
I have to say, I just figured it out, it's so trivial, even though the percentages are large, it's so trivial, like both, even the county amount, because the county amount is, yeah, good call.
Did you come up with $8,206?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Okay. The
Is
school
it
budget's
from
gonna,
there?
the proposed school budget's gonna increase $8,000.
I understand.
All right. Revenue sharing is gonna go up 36,000. That means cash coming in, that's good.
Well, but no. Municipal
Don't get so
going up.
excited.
Oh my God! All
The
right.
county might go up around 15.
But
Right,
even
but
then,
what I'm saying, what I'm saying is the revenue sharing will be a plus, the increase will be de minimis. And TIF isn't gonna matter.
TIF doesn't matter. TIF never matters.
Well, let's estimate
We'll,
our best tax.
Yeah, we'll estimate the best rate. Let's just
I think I'd like to do that, just because those numbers
Trust
are
us to
close.
do this, and we can do this, if that's okay.
Yeah.
that's fine.
We know what we're doing.
And when we do this, if it looks like there's a meaningful change in what is net to be raised, which in the end is the number that matters, net to be raised, we'll put that change on the letter. If it looks like it's not a meaningful change, then we'll just let it get buried in the program, because it's probably better for everybody. We'll just act like there wasn't a meaningful change, and that all changes are due to the revaluation effort. And people can come in if their taxes went up and say, hey, why did it go up for me? So if that number, if that total amount net to be raised is like within 3% of what it was, I'd say we just don't even bring it forward. If it's 6-7%, then we could mention it in the letter, so people realize that they were going to see a 6% increase without our project.
We've done that before,
We've done that.
to protect us, meaning the town chose to, or whatever entity chose to spend this much more this year. Your taxes are going up, don't blame it all on this reval. It's just, they were gonna go up if we didn't do the reval.
That'll get people the best possible information.
Nancy?
So, I saw the letter. I'm a little concerned, so I'm a former adult education director, and I've worked with people who have low literacy.
Okay.
Your letter is long, your letter has a lot of information in it, and it may have too much for people to understand it. So I'm concerned that it might be just overwhelming. And I know you want to give enough information, but at the same time, I'm afraid people are just gonna get overwhelmed.
You want to take an edit at it?
I can do that.
We have been so insular with that letter for so many years. I don't think we've ever had anybody look at it from outside of our office that hasn't read the same letter for essentially decades now.
I'll send you one more.
Okay.
Please give us your thoughts, and we will consider change.
Okay.
Having another set of eyes, having somebody who comes from a different perspective, we can't even really read it anymore, because our brain has read it so many times that we get it handed around the office to have it proofread, because we do change it a little bit here and there for special things in special towns, like that bit about would the rate have gone up anyway, and then, anyway, it's difficult for us to make sure that thing is always proofed out correctly, because we've all read it hundreds and hundreds of times.
And sometimes when you're presenting numbers, people just shut down anyway, so how you present them.
Well, the numbers on the bottom, you've noticed, are pretty streamlined.
Yes, I get that.
Value, exemption, tax.
Yeah.
So that part, we have learned that lesson.
But thank you for the opportunity, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll take the
Paul,
feedback.
can you make sure I'm looked into that?
Always.
Jane, thank you.
I'm gonna change it all and say we're no taxes
No, I
this
just
year
wanted to be
and
part of
all
that.
that stuff.
I'm gonna read it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
well, quite honestly, the final call on that will be my brother anyway, but we will welcome input.
Thank you, I
You know,
appreciate that.
it's kind of his baby. We just, but he will welcome input. If we can make it better, we'll make it better. Although I will point out that if you look at, we have, pretty much everything we do is throwing up a whole lot of information. So my brother-in-law got a letter in Lewiston about his proposed new value. It didn't have any estimated rate. Then there were Facebook posts with potential estimated rates. And, he used the last rate. He was like, oh my God, I won't be able to afford my house. And luckily he called me and I talked him off the cliff, and it's all, and now they're not even gonna implement the rate.
Right, and it wasn't that bad, actually, when you look at the final numbers. It wasn't that bad.
I have friends who had their values done in Portland, and their values were perfectly fine. What frustrated them was when they went on the website, they couldn't get any real detail on properties, and they were having a really hard time finding other properties that were like theirs. You go to our website, and you get every single picture, every sketch, every subcategory of value that we put. Everything we do is right there. You want to spend your afternoon looking at your neighbors' houses and looking at how we broke down their value, it's all there in detail, because we're full disclosure. So the letter, I think, is representative of that. We put a lot in there.
Can I ask an extra question?
Shoot.
What did you print off you didn't give us?
Oh, this stuff? Okay, so,
Didn't know how deep you guys wanted to go with this, but
I'm just curious, you know, that
Yeah.
somebody took the time to,
He's
so
the only for us, the question is, that's right.
we value, let's just take table 3. If you're on a table 3 base acre, and you're a full acre, you're 31.5. This is the math behind, what if you weren't a full acre? How much would it be? This is table 4, which is a little bit more valuable. If you were a full acre, you'd be 42,000. This is the math on what if you weren't a full acre.
I
So
think we're-
this in this form is really challenging for people who want to make heads or tails of it. Normally, if we were going to do it, we'd just shrink this all down, so it'd be like table 1, 17, table 2, 24. And then as you move through, well, this is all just the same one.
Yep.
These are all a series of the kind of inside pricing. This is the same thing for additional acreage. This one is the
2016.
prior revals version of the same thing. So these things here in this form, so at the end of the project, on our website, I'm gonna make digestible versions of this. And we put it up on our website under a public documents note, so people who really want to dig into this have access to some granular data on pricing.
That's not keeping it simple, Keith.
But that part of it, I think is more digestible, because the form it's in now is really hard to read. You know, it works for us, because this is how we do everything, and I spend a lot of time with this, and Paul and I do a lot of this, and we iteratively calibrate your values. What if we change this? How does that affect this? What if we change this one but not that one? And we just have done it for 35 years,
Keith,
and
that's
our
what
offices
she's
are
gonna
right
do.
next to each other.
She's gonna take all those
Yep.
papers and she's gonna.
she's gonna put them into a
digest it
chart for us, and we're gonna
afterwards.
have, yep, pie chart.
You mean, Charlie, did you have a question?
No, I was just commenting, you know, when you take an average, when things are going up exponentially, you're gonna say, well, I'm gonna use a 5-year average. Well, you're probably gonna get some kind of a linear slope that's not exactly, you know, projection is
I think
a mathematical challenge.
Yeah, and I wasn't proposing it, I was curious, now that, I already done all the numbers, and then, to me, it isn't significant at this point here, statistically significant, so I'm withdrawing it, but you guys, I'm sure you're still gonna do the
Yeah.
calculations, because you want to do the calculations, but, you know, at this point, it works what you were talking about, because I already done the calculations for myself, but I was curious, it was a curiosity rather than a challenge.
And we get, you know, we do these a lot, we've done it for a long time. You probably wouldn't be surprised how often all the things, you get the perfect storm of bad things happening at the same time on the budget process, right, as we're doing one of these projects. You know, there's some bond issue that's being voted on, and the school will go from, you know, 2,100,000 to 2,700,000. That's big. That affects our numbers. Those kinds of things, we just, if they're coming down the pike, if it passes, you get a huge increase. If it doesn't, you don't. Sometimes it goes to both more at once. We still got to deliver a project here. So we're always a little bit conservative until we actually have numbers,
Makes sense.
Thank you.
just out of fear.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. So we'd like to get out letters
Good.
to taxpayers in, this is May, so late May for June hearings. And they'll be here probably 3 days.
Do you have
Here.
those dates?
No, I'll work those out with Maria.
Okay.
We'll base those on availability here, but we'll have like in the evening too, so people who work will be able to come here, like maybe do some 9 to, you know, some during the daytime and at nighttime as well.
Thank you.
People work, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
No, thank you, I enjoyed that.
And,
Very much so.
and you did. Unlike other things, when we do commit taxes as your reval company, we're not going anywhere. We'll,
So,
We're still gonna
saying
be-
that,
grab those
oh,
printouts.
yeah, please, thank you. Yes, sir.
as your company goes, what's your long-term evolution gonna be? I mean, I realize you guys are only in your 30s, but.
That is a really good question, and we talk about it all the time, because we get a bunch of us coming up to
Secession is always at our mind game.
what would be, yeah, so, quite honestly, right now, we don't have a plan. Keep on going. We have revals booked out to 2028. And we're starting sign a couple contracts for 2029. Between now and then, it's full speed ahead, all hands on deck. We're actually bringing in new people to make sure we've got enough youth coming up behind us.
Yep,
The
got a mentor.
We got Dennis, who's, how old are you now?
I'm 61.
Yeah, so we got Dennis, who's pretty much committed to run till he's 70 if he can. I'm probably gonna go till I'm 70. Don't know about my brother. So we got a pretty good ramp ahead of us. So,
I
You
don't
didn't
blame
ask me how
you.
long you were sticking around.
you notice I didn't mention
You
it.
didn't ask me.
I'm not committing him to anything. He's here, he can speak for himself. So we've got a pretty good ramp ahead of us in terms of stable, moving, I'd say a really, really stable 5-year plan. After that, I honestly don't know which way it's gonna go. It might end up being employee run. I'd say the one thing that isn't gonna happen is it's not, and I don't know if you knew this, but the founder and my father died just recently.
He was
So-
105 years old.
Yeah, so he had a really good life. It was a great, he had a great exit. He lived in his house till the very last bit. But, so now we're second gen, and we're a big extended family. We've all been together for a really long time. So the idea that it's just gonna go away, or that it'll just get turned off with a switch, that isn't on the table. That hasn't been on the table. My brother's been very clear about that. Not gonna happen. How we get from the 5-year plan to the 10-year plan is unknown
Yeah.
today.
Typical family businesses fail in the 3rd generation.
Yeah,
That's optimistic, thanks.
No, it's real, that's reality.
Right, but I don't think we're gonna just run it that way. My kid is still in college. My brother's son doesn't seem to be interested, and his daughter is not interested. His sons are gainfully employed, doing very well. Dennis's son works with us. I think before it became a true 3rd generation family business, it would become more of an employee-owned business. We gotta make sure we get the people in place for that. We gotta make sure that there's a transition model for that.
No, I was just curious because,
You notice the bald
Assessing-
heads and the
well,
wrinkles
yeah, a
and.
little bit, but,
Yeah, no, we don't plan on having our clients have a big gaping hole when we all pack up our shops. That isn't part of the plan, and it wouldn't be fair to the legacy we built. Yeah, this has been running since I was born, so it's 65 years old. You know, Johnny O'Donnell and Associates has been providing municipal services for 65 years. We have a client list of about 40 towns. We don't take that lightly. You know, we don't feel like we can just say, oh, we did well, you know, so it's just the nature of it. So,
Great.
yeah, we'll be around for a while, even if even if we end up bringing, like, how long we send Paul here when he comes on Thursday, we've all realized that we gotta kind of let the younger crew step into these roles. That would be the next thing you'd see. But
Not for at least 4 more years. At 61.
Okay, these two guys just retired.
I'm already retired for about 2.5 years. It's the best thing I ever did. I love it.
that's not helping.
See?
Yeah. it's
That's
really-
not helping.
She's now lying.
I know, that's not helping me.
I'm not gonna be here, Paul's not gonna be here next revaluation.
But,
I will not be here for the next reevaluation
there is,
in 10 years.
I will not be here for the next revaluation.
Not planning either.
there's probably nobody here who wants him to keep going more than me. However,
Yeah.
there's also, you earn what you do something really well for 35 years, you kind of earn some decisions.
Mhm.
So when he says he's done, and that's just the way it's gonna be, so.
Well, yeah, but Paul and I both know that I'm not gonna be here in 10 years, I'm hoping I'll be on the citizens side listening in.
And I'll still be asking questions, but I probably won't be on this side of it.
And by then I'll be 75, so don't know what that's gonna bring. So, but we aren't gonna just turn the switch off. That's not gonna happen. Never, it's not.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.